And now for the Honorable Member, Minister of Water and Housing, the Honorable Collin Croal.
Mr. Speaker, we just heard the previous speaker, the Honorable Annette Ferguson, and in winding down on her many conclusions, she alluded to the period or the tenure, the time that she served as minister. The fact is, her legacy will always remain, she run with the mace. Mr. Speaker, it is with deep sense of duty and overwhelming commitment to helping to make the lives of our citizens better that I stand here today to support Budget 2025, a secure, prosperous, and sustainable Guyana. Budget 2025, which was presented in this August House on January 17th by our esteemed Senior Minister responsible for finance, the one and only Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, outlined our government's forward-thinking and ambitious fiscal plan that will build on the strides that we made in the last 4.5 years, or 54 months to be precise. And the sustainable expand and extend the rapid economic growth that Guyana is undergoing. It is a fact, Mr. Speaker, that Guyana's remarkable growth, while largely due to the increased oil production and a rapidly growing oil and gas sector, has allowed us to make significant gains in every sector, and particularly in infrastructure development, from farm to market and community roads to highways, bridges and wharves, to modern schools and health facilities, new housing areas, newly constructed subsidized houses that are available to low, moderate, middle, and high-income applicants, to tax reforms that increase disposable income and stimulated economic activity in all of the sectors. And all of this while maintaining the fiscal sustainability by carefully and prudently navigating the pitfalls that can so easily beset us. Mr. Speaker, we have undisputably demonstrated throughout our stewardship that we are more than capable of managing the affairs of this great nation. Even while we have invested aggressively and heavily in key sectors like housing, infrastructure, and public services, we have ensured that every Guyanese benefits from the social safety nets that we have introduced, from cash grants to public assistance and education subsidies. We have and continue to include young people and young professionals in our nation's plans as we help to realize their dreams, from home ownership to higher education, lower taxes, and generally providing a strong, stable, enabling environment that can foster their personal growth and development. Well, while you think about this, Mr. Speaker, cast your mind back to 2015 to 2020, when we witnessed firsthand the confusion that the coalition government visited on this land, from the ridiculous 2 a.m. curfew to the unimaginative and lazy approach to the housing sector. It was musical chairs at housing and every one of them was off key. Not a single effective strategy came from them. And yet today, while we are busy developing new, building affordable housing, and expanding our infrastructure portfolio, these people look for every reason to complain and criticize without offering anything tangible. They see the zombie of wrongdoing everywhere, even though it is their minister with responsibility for housing who was found to have been giving contracts to her husband and was subsequently removed from the ministry. They were so bad that their own MP supported a no confidence motion against them. They were so bad that they are saddled with an incomplete monstrosity in the form of Durban Park. They are so bad that we had to face international embarrassment and risk having our country become a pariah because of their brazen attempt to steal the 2020 elections. Mr. Speaker, it is our government who, after the madness of 2020, breathed a new life into our country. Yep. It is our government that had to restore confidence in our economy. Yep. These past 4.5 years have seen our government commit to the task of rebuilding and re-energizing the country as we lead a transformation that has never been seen in this dear land of ours. And it is a privilege to be on this side, to witness and be part of these achievements, as Budget 2025 is an excellent blueprint for us to build on the gains we have made and to continue to lead this great nation. I turn quickly to, Mr. Speaker, to the period before 1992. Mr. Speaker, as we are approaching the middle of this, the 5th year in government, it is necessary to consider, as the young people say, how it started, how it's going. First, let me make it clear that the housing crisis that engulfed Guyana started before 1992 and stemmed from years of neglect, mismanagement, and underinvestment before 1992. It was not just a crisis of inadequate infrastructure, but also one of access and affordability, which had left thousands of citizens without proper shelter, hope for stable conditions, and high rental costs. There was a significant shortage of houses, particularly for low-income families. Many families were living in overcrowded conditions with inadequate access to basic amenities, such as potable water, electricity, and sanitation. Squatter settlements littered urban and peri-urban areas. The public housing program was underfunded and failed to meet the growing demand. Widespread poverty further exacerbated the housing crisis. Additionally, because the program was poorly designed, young professionals, single parents, vulnerable groups were all shut out. Housing in the hinterland was non-existent. The lack of government intervention resulted in many communities having poor quality houses, little or no access to a reliable supply of clean water and electricity. I turn your attention, Mr. Speaker, to 1992 to 2015. Mr. Speaker, on our assumption to office in 1992, the PVPC government made the housing sector a top priority. Recognizing the gravity of the crisis, the government allocated millions of dollars at a time that when we were still facing dire economic circumstances, another legacy left by the then PNC. To launch a robust housing program, that is what we did under the PPP. Under this program, more than 100,000 house lots were allocated to low and middle income families. This initiative significantly reduced squatting and informal settlements and allowed citizens to legally own their own homes. We introduced turnkey homes that targeted young professionals and expanded access to utilities. Access to water increased from 25% to over 80%. by 2015. We invested in water treatment plants, distribution networks, and upgraded the quality and availability of water. Established the Guyana Water Inc., consolidated and modernized water services, which in turn provided better management and delivery of water. As a result of these initiatives, the housing and the construction sectors were booming by 2015. Building Expo had become a highly anticipated and provided a platform that showcased local and international building and construction products, including new technologies in housing, and catalyzed suppliers and investors, especially the local private sector. I turn your attention to 2015 to 2020, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, the coalition administration inherited a robust housing program from this PPPC government, and almost as if history was repeating itself, they ran it into the ground again. Bear with me as I remind this Honorable House of their promises, their manifesto promise. And for example, Mr. Speaker, their manifesto promised the following: that they will initiate a campaign called Renewing the Dream, which will expand and upgrade housing development away from the seaside and facilitate home ownership, not only house lot distribution. That they will ensure that basic infrastructure such as electricity, drainage, roads, water, and other facilities are in place as house lots are issued. Mr. Speaker, their achievement, it was only 3 new areas that were developed under the APNU AFC. And I challenge the previous speaker. Let me name them for you, Mr. Speaker. We have Peters Hall, which was transferred in 2011. Providence, which was transferred in 2011. Prospect Tract A, transferred to CHPA in 2012. Mr. Speaker, if you notice the years, APNU allocated lands, therefore, that were already acquired by the People's Progressive Party Civic prior to 2015. Mr. Speaker, they promised to facilitate a process whereby credit union savings can be used as collateral for low-income housing loans. Achievement, nil. They promised to support a national volunteer corps that will help the needy build their homes. Achievement, nil. They promised to establish new communities and towns in the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, all they did, they built 20 houses in Georgetown to relocate the Broad Street residents. Credit to the previous speaker, and a few houses in the hinterland. But the very Inter-American Development funded project that you inherited from the then Minister of Housing and Water for the hinterland program, that is what you executed. You promised to establish a special fund to provide subsidies to mortgage companies for low-interest loans to low-income families. What did you achieve? Nil. You promised to build starter homes for single parents and other vulnerable persons in society. In every housing scheme being developed, what you did was the very 20 houses I spoke about. You promised to build retirement villages with all the appropriate amenities. What you achieved? Nil. You promised to upkeep the National Beautification Drive. Green spots and parks will be established in each new housing area and village. What you did was a full upgrade to community grounds. You promised industrial development and production linked to be tied to housing with private sector being tax incentives to develop locally produced housing materials. What did you achieve? You achieved nil. You promised to standardize the building codes for new buildings and provide free standardized house plans. What did you achieve? You achieved nil. You promised to develop a national housing database for strategic planning. What did you achieve? You achieved nil. You promised to create a new commercial and industrial zone with new housing areas to enable easy access to these industries by a suitable workforce. What did you achieve? You achieved nil. Mr. Speaker, maybe maybe, Mr. Speaker, let's wait. Maybe we can use Durban Park as their green space promise that has been fulfilled. Not a single one of these prior promises did they make good on. Mr. Speaker, they had time, they had money, they had a successful housing policy to build on, an enabling environment, investors and local private sector support, but yet they failed miserably. You want to come and lecture us here? They were incompetent and lazy and wasted valuable time witch hunting, and like a true bureaucracy, spent much of their time on meetings which produced no real results. Housing became an afterthought while citizens were left waiting. They dreamt that their promise became a nightmare. Under the coalition government, the housing sector suffered from a lack of vision and urgency. Instead of accelerating land allocation and home construction to meet the growing demand, the sector was practically paralyzed. Housing schemes were abandoned or left incomplete. Thousands of applications were languished. Families were stuck in limbo, waiting for allocations that never materialized while still paying exorbitant rents. Those who couldn't afford to wait resorted to squatting on unregulated lands. They even suspended building expo. And then what? Like a Tweedledum and a Tweedledee, they spent more than a year coming up with a new name and location for the event, which inevitably failed. It was sheer madness, Mr. Speaker. The coalition's approach was just careless. It was callous. Their inability to prioritize the basic needs of our people were nothing short of an insult to the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, I turn your attention to 2020 to present. By the time the PPPC government assumed office in 2020, after the elections debacle, the housing deficit had escalated, and listen, Honorable Annette, more than 70,000 applications were pending. Housing schemes that began prior to 2015 were either halted or poorly executed. The installation of roads, water systems, and electricity were ignored or delayed. What was once a sector with momentum, they had in the space of less than 5 years become a stagnant landscape of missed opportunities. And once again, Mr. Speaker, it was up to the PPPC government to bring the housing and water sector back to life. And like the fighters and champions we are, once again, we went straight into battle. Mr. Speaker, our manifesto promised to create 10,000 house lots annually within the first 5-year period, and no thank you, Honorable Annette, first 5 years, to invest in infrastructure for new and existing housing scheme, to remove VAT on building materials, to facilitate affordable financing for home ownership. We committed to promote home ownership among youths and young professionals through tax and other incentives. We commit to promote partnership and incentive private sector involvement in the sector and reinstate water subsidies to pensioners. We commit to expand the treated water to more areas. We commit to upgrade the distribution and transmission of water in urban, rural, and hinterland areas. We commit to reducing losses in the distribution system. We commit to improving access to an enhanced quality of water. We commit to creating the institutional mechanisms to rationalize Guyana water resources. This is what we promise the people of this country, that what we will do in 2020. It's January 2025, 29th of January to be exact, Mr. Speaker. And I can confidently say that in this House today, that we are on the cusp of full achievement of these targets. We have now completed over 95% of those commitments that we have just outlined. Maybe let's give some numbers. We have allocated a total of, listen good, 40,808 residential house lots. And Mr. Speaker, that does not include allocations for commercial and industrial lots. Mr. Speaker, we have completed infrastructure works in over 50 new housing areas and existing schemes. We have installed over 3,123 LED lights on the western East Bank and coast in Berbice. We have constructed and completed major highways on the East Bank and the West Bank. We removed the VAT from locally produced building and construction materials, including sheetrock, concrete boards, and cement. We have built roads, bridges, and culverts in new and existing communities in more than those 50 communities across the country. We have drilled 157 wells, of which 130 are in the hinterland riverine areas. We have completed the construction of 7 new water treatment plants. We have installed 87,000 water meters, and we are on track to increasing the treated water coverage before the end of 2025. We have collaborated with the Ministry of Finance, Guyana Revenue Authority, and the banking sector to raise the ceiling for mortgage interest relief and lower the residential mortgage interest rates to make low-income mortgage rates more accessible and affordable. We have introduced housing subsidies, housing grants for vulnerable communities. We have provided employment by contracting more than 100 private contractors to construct houses and infrastructure works. We have provided more than 40,000 residents with, for the first time, access to potable water and increased the access in the hinterland from 46% in 2020 to 91% as of December 31st, 2024. We have collaborated with the private sector to provide over 824 commercial and industrial developments in regions 2, 3, 4, and 10. And that does not add, as we be reminded, to the residential house lots. We have recalibrated the way the Central Housing and Planning Authority approves construction permit by establishing this electronic single window system. This intervention has reduced processing time and paperwork. We have restored the pension subsidy to over 28,000 pensioners. We removed the VAT on water consumption, and more than 182 customers are benefiting from reduced water tariffs. As a result, Mr. Speaker, to the tune of $523 million annually, that's what the subsidies cost. We have, importantly too, Mr. Speaker, despite the bad-mouthing and the exaggerations by the opposition, we have succeeded in reducing squatter and unregulated settlements. Mr. Speaker, I heard the noise first yesterday from the Honorable Ganesh Mahipal. He's not here. Challenge me. I just heard from the Honorable Annette Ferguson, who, by the way, she boasts about the period she served, but what the Honorable member didn't say, it took her, she was so eager to be appointed, it took her 9 months to access the office, to even go in the office, because they did not transfer the chairs, the sofas, the blinds, the room to green. Mr. Speaker, let me give some facts today. 41,000, Mr. Speaker, 40,808 residential regularized lots. Listen, Honorable Annette Ferguson, let's go together. And in these, you ask for the list of schemes. Because they're so numerous, and in the interest of time, you'll have to go with me. So let's go. Region 1, we are completing that program this year, so I'll go to what we've accomplished. Region 2, Plantation, Buxton, St. Joseph. We have allocated, Mr. Speaker, 791. Region 3, these are all schemes. Write them down. Go check. Plantation, Edinburgh, Anna Katrina, CI, Stortville, Metamerzar, Stortville, East and West, Lenora, Vriesland, Laurentier, Katrina, that's in Wales, Vive La Force, Dikendron, Plantation Edinburgh, we have allocated in Region 3, Mr. Speaker, 9,172. Region 4, La Reconnaissance, LBI, Vigilance, Strathspey, Bladenall, Monrepo, Annandale, Good Hope, Two Friends, Lusitan, Non-Paral, Enterprise, Plantation, Cummins Lodge, Little Diamond, Prospect, Great Diamond, Blocks 1, 5, 9, 18, 3, 7, 11, 13. Plantation Hope, Plantation Lusignan, the extension to the Endrak, Larry Souvenir, Plantation Success, and we have just started Silicon City. Mr. Speaker, in Region 4, 24,519 allocations. Region 5, Plantation Baltiok, Shieldstone, Burma, Experiment Phase 2, Bath Block A, Experiment. Region 5, 1,959 allocations. Region 6, number 75, number 79. In Region 6, Mr. Speaker, we have Ordnance Fortlands, Williamsburg, Hampshire, Blocks 3 and 4, 76, Palmyra, Molson Creek. We have allocated 1,959 in Region 6. Block CHPA, Bartica Extension, Mr. Speaker, we have allocated 132 in Region 7. Region 9, Track CHPA Lethem, we have allocated 676. Region 10, the Honorable Ferguson, and where's the other one? Yes, right here, Honorable Sears. Region 10, the Region 10 that you said you would be neglecting. Amelia's Ward, Phase 4, Fitzhope, Conception, Wisma, we have allocated in office 1,598 in Region 10 to date, when you did in a whole 5 years 404 allocations. That gives together, Mr. Speaker, I know maths is not good, but let him go back to the tape, and that will give you 40,808. Somebody asked about Region 8. Though we have designed the area and we're ready to allocate, and you'll hear about that in our future plans. Mr. Speaker, these are our achievements to date. We still have a few months to go. They are real achievements. They are real fulfillment of the promises we made to the people of Guyana. They trusted us and we have delivered. Today, our government is working tirelessly to ensure that every Guyanese has access to affordable and sustainable housing and to a reliable supply of clean and safe water. We have delivered to every front for the Ministry of Housing and Water. Did we have challenges, Mr. Speaker? Yes. Did we throw up our hands and complain? No. Why? Because we promised the citizens of Guyana that we will give them a better life and that we will help them to realize their dreams of owning their own homes, of providing safe communities where they are raising their family and develop for themselves. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member threw up a few pictures and called some names. Well, let me interject and pause here now. Mr. Speaker, I present to you the top part of this is Cummins Lodge. The honorable member referred to Cummins Lodge. The very Cummins Lodge that they proudly said that they did some allocations. Mr. Speaker, this is what the status of Cummins Lodge when the PPPC government came into office. Look at the bottom here. These are all persons who have now signed and are able to build. Mr. Speaker, if you want to know how beautiful it looks in Cummins Lodge, just look at this. Look at the houses that have been constructed in Cummins Lodge, and you come here to speak about Cummins Lodge. Mr. Speaker, I'll give you one more example. Let's go to the East Bank of Demerara. The entire East Bank is now allocated. Honorable Member Ferguson, let's go together. Come, let's focus, stay focused, stay focused. Mr. Speaker, at the top, look here. This is what East Bank looked like at Great Diamond. I want to give you two examples. This is what, look here, honorable member, this is what it is now under the People's Progressive Party civic government.
Show us what you did. Show us.
Mr. Speaker,
Show us what you did.
we have laid a solid foundation from 2020 to 2024 by being prudent stewards of the budgetary allocations made to the Housing and Ministry of Housing and Water. This year, Our government has allocated $137.5 billion to develop housing and water in 2025. Of this, $112.6 billion is dedicated to the housing sector and will go towards developing new housing areas. We will allocate an additional, a minimum 25,000 house lots this year, of which over 15,000 will be accomplished before June of this year. We will establish 20 new housing areas by June of 2025 to accomplish this 15,000 by June. Mr. Speaker, we will construct more and a minimum of 1,000 houses. $23.1 billion, we will ensure that every citizen will have access to clean, reliable, and safe water, including the installation of new supply systems in the hinterland communities and the construction of new treatment plants, which, when completed, will totally transform and change the vacuum, and we will improve the quality of and availability of water to households on the coastline. Mr. Speaker, the APNUFC coalition government had 5 years to make a difference, but their tenure turned out to be one of the most disastrous periods in our history. Under their watch, the housing sector was practically on life support, and it was our government that had to step up and re-energize it. We invested over $244 billion to breathe new life into the housing and water sector. Housing and water, Mr. Speaker, are fundamental rights. Without them, progress is impossible. Every house lot distributed represents, Mr. Speaker, the hope for a family. Every gallon of clean water supply is a step towards healthier communities. We are committed to transparency and accountability. Our investments are not just about building houses, they are about creating communities, they are about empowering citizens, and they are about ensuring that every Guyanese has access and a place to call their home. The allocations to the Ministry of Housing and Water are justified, and are essentially, Mr. Speaker, they represent our commitment to correcting past mismanagement and building a future where every citizen can thrive. Mr. Speaker, I wish to remind the honorable member, on their record, I alluded to 3 housing areas only developed. Of the 7,534 house lots allocated between 2015 to 2020, Mr. Speaker, 2,000 of those were done in the run-up to the elections during their caretaker government. Mr. Speaker, hinterland systems were ignored. Investment in the housing sector were slashed. The affordable housing programs were completely abandoned. Hinterland and rural areas were totally neglected, forcing residents to rely on unsafe water source.
Honourable Minister, let us rely on an extension so that you can conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Honourable Minister, you may continue. You have 5 minutes to conclude.
In contrast, Mr. Speaker, our government has restored confidence in the ministry, delivering with speed and precision. The 10 to 25 budget investments will create 10,000 jobs in construction, engineering, and related sectors. It will stimulate local economies by providing opportunities for small businesses in housing schemes. It will reduce inequality by ensuring that low-income families and hinterland communities are prioritized. As I said, we will establish over 20 new housing schemes in regions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10, each equipped with proper roads, drainage, electricity, and recreational spaces. We will expand the housing program for low-income, moderate, middle, and young professionals. We will provide housing subsidies and grants for single mothers, low-income earners, and first-time homeowners, ensuring that no one is left behind. In the water sector, we constructed 5 new water treatment plants in key regions in the coastline to ensure that we are on target to accomplishing a minimum of 90% access to treated water here on the coastline, which includes 16 small plants and as well as small powered wells for the hinterland communities such as 𝐃𝐄𝐁, Lette, and Barometer, bringing safe water to thousands. We will modernize Georgetown's water network to address decades of underinvestment and inefficiency. We will introduce green housing developments, integrated renewable energy solutions to lower utility costs. We will expand the energy solutions we will expand rainwater harvesting system in remote areas, reducing water insecurity by climate change effect. These projects, Mr. Speaker, are designed to provide real benefits to the people of Guyana, benefits that were absent under the previous administration. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Housing and Water stands as a beacon of this administration's commitment to the people. The 2025 budget is a vote for progress, for equity, and for development. I call on this House to join me in approving these allocations and ensuring that every Guyanese, regardless of income or location, has access to affordable housing and clean water. This budget represents the vision of a united Guyana, where development is inclusive, sustainable, and far-reaching. Let us reject the failures of the past and embrace the future of opportunities and prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I want to extend, in closing, I want to extend thanks to the Senior Minister, Dr. 𝐁𝐔𝐃𝐆𝐄, and his team for the excellent work in the national budget, which reflects a deep understanding of our country's needs, balances fiscal responsibility with sustainable policies that promote development and opportunity. Thank you to the staff, hardworking staff of the Ministry of Housing and Water, and through the agencies, Guyana Water Inc. and Central Housing and Planning Authority, for their continued commitment and support for the work being done in the ministry as we continue to triple and double all the previous work that used to be done with a similar amount of staff. Even Saturdays, they're working continuously. Mr. Speaker, I therefore am delighted to lend my unreserved support to Budget 2025 under the theme, a secure, prosperous, and a sustainable Guyana.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Croal.